Okay, an apology. I gave the wrong clue at the end of last week's film because, yeah, I forgot it was Halloween. So, as it's Halloween, and it's Halloween today, let's carry on with the Halloween. Now, if you're wondering why I'm doing Halloween 2, I did Halloween 1 last year. Go check that out. But let's crack on with its sequel. Was it any better? Because let's face it, I didn't give the first one a good score. American 2 is a 1981 American slasher film. The film picks up exactly where the last film actually finished, with Michael Myers following Laurie Strode to the hospital while the psychiatrist Dr. Loomis continues his pursuit of him. When the film was released back in 1981, it only received mixed reviews, but it did have some praise for its performances and atmosphere. But what have I found wrong with this film? Well, join me, Berryman, as I discuss 10 things wrong with Halloween 2. Number 10, director. When it comes to horror, there's two names that jump to mind. One of them is George A. Romero, the man who created the modern day zombies. He actually gets a nod in this film. But the other one is John Carpenter, who created the first film. He did everything to that first film. He did a lot in the second film. He actually produced it. He actually wrote the story for it. But he didn't direct it. And I think that's wrong. And the thing is, he chose not to direct it. He wasn't forced to, he wasn't told to step down, he just didn't want to do it. So he passed the directorial details over to Rick Rosenthal. It was his first film he ever directed. That was a gamble. Now luckily that was a gamble that paid off because Rick has done a very good job of mimicking John Carpenter. But the problem is, there's only one John Carpenter, and this film sort of does, in one aspect, suffer from John Carpenter not actually directing this film. Number 9, music. So with the first Halloween film, the score was done by John Carpenter on his own. Now, this time he has some help by the name of Alan Howarth, I think that was what his name was, and it does change it slightly. Now, John Carpenter still is there in the background, and it still has that classic Halloween theme, but it's not just a piano, it's more electronic. And to me, it doesn't feel as good, as daunting as, I don't know how to explain it, but having it electronic didn't exactly work like it did in the first film. This is one of the things this film does less, is its musical score has dropped. Even though it's the same music, it's the style of how the music's being played has sort of lost its effectiveness, so to speak. Number 8, Laurie looks like a drag queen. Jamie Lee Curtis is a stunningly beautiful woman. Even in today's, where she's a lot older, she still could get it. You can tell my missus is not around when I film these. But back then, she was still beautiful. She had that youthful charm, and yeah, normally she looks great, except for one scene. One scene, when they're actually on the trolley, bringing her out, she looks like a drag queen, and not a good drag queen. She's played drag queens in a few times, and she just still looks amazing. I get the feeling that Jamie Lee Curtis is not the actress on that trolley there. She is, but something just went severely wrong with her makeup and her hair, and she just looked awful. Now, I know she's just been through an ordeal, but if that was the case, then why does she go back to looking like an attractive woman who's been through an ordeal when she's in the back of the ambulance? It's just that one bit going from the house to the ambulance on the trolley. She just didn't look right. Number 7, product placement. Now, I'm all for product placement to a certain extent. I mean, it helps with the budget. It's a little bit of extra money that you don't have to pay back. I will give you X amount if you put half products in your film. Thank you, Mr. Salesman. Great, I don't mind that. However, this film does take it to the extreme. Coca-Cola really went all out on their product placement. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Now, normally it's in the background or it's just in the scene, but Firstly, at the very beginning of the house, when Mike Myers finds the knife, he takes the knife and this old woman's making sandwiches with 6 bottles of Coke still in the packet. Now, most normal people would have actually put them away in the fridge. You wouldn't have actually seen them. That product placement didn't exactly work. Later on, while Laurie's in the hospital and that ambulance guy's sort of hitting on her, he turns around and says, "Would you like a Coke?" Most people don't say that. "Would you like a drink?" "Yes, please." "What would you like?" Surprise me. That's what why specifically say Coke? No one actually says that in a real world scenario, even back in the 70s. And then lastly, when they're in the canteen, they're just talking. Doesn't really progress the film. They're just talking. She's drinking out of a Coke cup. There's 100 million Coke cups behind them. Yeah, it's way in your face Coca-Cola. Not your strongest suit. Number 6, quietest hospital ever. Okay, I'm assuming most viewers of this video have been in hospital at one point or another. And have you ever been in a hospital as quiet as the one in this film? I mean, seriously, it is quiet. There's only one doctor who spends most of the film drunk before he dies, and 2 patients go in. Now, luckily, one of them, even though he had a very nasty accident, swallowed a sweet with a razor blade in it, at least he got to go home. And the only other patient that you saw go into the hospital was Laurie. This is a Halloween night. There are student parties everywhere. Guarantee, even back in the 70s, students were doing stupid things where people get injured. The whole party has to go to the hospital to laugh at the person getting injured. That hospital would have been crowded anyway. Now, follow on to the fact that Laurie Strode is now in that hospital. The press would have followed her. It would have been absolutely carnage, mayhem in that hospital, and yet nobody's there. No wonder Mike Myers had an easy time killing everybody. Number 5, police guard. So Laurie is a survivor of an attack. The killer is still on the loose. Although they are whether he's still alive and on the loose, he is still a killer. Statistically speaking, he is going to go after his failed attack. May kill some other people on the way, but statistically speaking, he is going to go after her. So why do the police not leave at least one cop on the door? I mean, I know the hospital had a security guard. Bizarrely enough, I do complain about security in films quite a lot. The hospital actually got all of those. It had a security guard. It actually had security cameras. The security guard was doing his job before he get killed. Great. But why not have a cop, 1, maybe 2, but at least 1 cop on the door? You could have killed him off quite easily. He would have probably been, "I'm bored, let's go have a nap," dead. But no, not a single copper. If I was a copper, I would have made sure that someone was on her door. Number 4, staging dead bodies. I did get the feeling that Michael Myers was experimenting for some reason with the dead bodies, because after he killed them, he posed them as if they were committing suicide. Look at the security guard. He put the body like he hung himself. Look at one of the nurses. He made it look like she stabbed herself in her arm in an artery to make herself bleed out. The doctor stabbed himself in the eye. All these bodies were staged to make it look like suicides. Why? He never showed that in the first film, and he only showed it with a few people. It didn't actually make sense. Now, if he was a sadistic serial killer where he was a bit smart, I could have understood that, but he was just a mindless zombie with one goal: to kill Laurie. It didn't really add on to the character of Mike Myers. Number 3, blood. Okay, I know it came out in the 70s, but don't we know that blood isn't bright fluorescent red by now? Seriously, the blood in this film is so bright, it's unbelievable. It looks like a hooker's lipstick. There's a couple of times, one during Laurie's dream sequence, which I could have bought with, because it's a dream sequence, that the blood is that really, really bright red. I could buy that, I could understand that. But the other one is, as I mentioned, the nurse that had the pipe into her arteries and bled out all over the floor. That was so bright. Made me laugh that Jamie didn't notice it, but it was just too bright. Blood is a dark red. I'm pretty sure they would have known that back in the 70s. Number 2, clean Jamie. So, sort of following on from the last point, Jamie slips in this fluorescent blood, knocks himself out, and he is lying in the pool of blood. Cut later on in the film, he comes out, he's still not with it because he's been knocked out. He gets in his car, tries to turn it on, then passes out. But for somebody who's been lying in blood for a couple of hours, you're remarkably clean. Your clothes would have absorbed a lot of that blood up, your hair would have been covered in blood, but it looks like you've had a shower and got changed. That is a very strange thing to miss out on a film like this. Number 1, silly girl. Towards the end of the film, Laurie's escaped from the hospital. She's managed to get away from Mike Myers. She has the opportunity to run away, get some help, get some reinforcements, and she hides in a car. Run, girl, run! Why? Why did you just decide to have a nap in a car? He could have spent time looking in every single car. Hell, statistically, he probably would have gone running after you, looking for you, but he would have known where how to go. This was the opportunity you had, and you stayed around. And yeah, it didn't work. Final thoughts. So if you have watched the previous Halloween video that I made, I wasn't very nice about that film. I said it had a brilliant beginning and it had a brilliant ending. But I really slated the middle of that film because I thought it was boring. This film makes up for that. The beginning, it couldn't do wrong because it's the ending of the last film, so it could never do the beginning wrong. But this time, it actually had stuff happening. All the way through, things happened. Some of it even off screen, and it showed you later on, and I kind of liked that. This film kept me more engaging than the first one. And the ending, it's like they watched my last video, because I actually said that towards the end of the film, Michael Myers, who'd been meticulous and calculating all the way through, just went, stereotypical, I'm just going to try and help do whatever I can. Whereas this film, he was that cold, calculating, sadistic killer the whole way through. Well, until he had his eyes blown out, and then he was just swinging around. But that time, I could believe it, there was an explanation for it. And that's what I need sometimes, is just that explanation. This film improves on the first one in so many ways, but with the exception of the music, keeps everything from the first one that was good. Rick, even though I've already said it was wrong that Rick actually directed it, actually has done a very good job. It's a shame that John never wanted to come back and do this film, but he's done a good job. He managed to keep the style and the essence and the feel of John Carpenter. What a brilliant thing to do. But still, you're not John Carpenter, and I'm sorry, and that's the only reason why I'm knocking you down. Other than that, this film was good. Lots of people complained that it was more slasher than psychological like the first one. And strange enough, I actually prefer it. I am actually a lot more happier with this film. It's one of the rare cases of a sequel being so much better than the original. Which wasn't hard, I didn't like the original. This was so much better. So what am I going to rank it? Well, you know what? I'm actually going to give it an 8 out of 10 berries. Now, I know fans of the Halloween franchise actually don't like this as much as the first one, and they're all going to hate me for this, but at the end of the day, it has to be said, this is a better film than the first one. It's more entertaining, it's more engaging, and it's not as boring, which is what I found with the first one. So yes, I'm a lot more happier. Hopefully that people will understand where I'm coming from, but if you don't, let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comments below with your marks out of 10 as well. Now, on to next week. Next week, I am going to do the film that I gave the clue for the end of last week. If you haven't watched last week's video, go and watch that one. Come back with a clue what you think it is. I'll pin any correct answers. But until then, I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.